It was an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was on my way to the courthouse, heels clicking against the pavement, mind already running through opening arguments. The streets were their usual mess, rushed commuters, honking horns, and that ever-present scent of exhaust mixed with roasted peanuts from the cart on the corner. I was just about to cross Lexington when I saw him, a homeless man, sitting slumped on a bench near the bus stop. His clothes were layered and ragged, his skin weathered and sunburnt, a half-empty coffee cup clutched between his hands. Nothing unusual, sadly. I might have kept walking, honestly, until something on his wrist caught the morning light. It shimmered, a familiar glint, gold, worn. No, not just familiar. I knew that watch. I stopped cold. Traffic passed in a blur behind me. The noise faded. Time stood still. I inched closer, eyes locked on the object strapped to his thin wrist. My breath hitched, my chest tightened. There was no mistaking it. The tiny crack in the glass near the 3 o'clock mark. The initials MG engraved on the back. I remembered standing in that tiny jewelry shop in Soho 22 years ago, saving up for months to buy it for Michael's birthday. He wore it every single day until the night he died. He died in a car crash on Route 9. They said the impact had been so bad the body barely recognizable. Closed casket. I never even saw him, just a few of his things. And that watch? It was never returned. Yet here it was, on the wrist of a stranger. I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled. I stepped closer, closer still. "Excuse me," I whispered, my voice breaking like glass. Where did you get that watch?" The man didn't look up, but he said something, so softly I almost missed it. Oh, Red, that nickname. Only one person ever called me that. And that person had been dead for 20 years. Michael died when we were both just 26. We were still kids, really. Playing grown-up in a tiny one-bedroom apartment with mismatched furniture and dreams bigger than our bank accounts. I was deep in my second year of law school, barely sleeping, always studying. And Michael, he made it all bearable. He was my calm in the storm, my safe place, until he wasn't. The night he died, we fought. God, we fought. I can still hear my own voice, sharp and angry, echoing off the walls. I accused him of not understanding how hard everything was. He accused me of shutting him out. He stormed out, said he needed space. I told him not to come back. It was the last thing I ever said to him. He died that night. A crash on Route 9. They said he was speeding, that he lost control. They said it was quick. I've replayed it all 1,000 times in my mind. What if I hadn't yelled? What if I'd followed him out the door? What if he hadn't gotten in that car? But there are no do-overs in life. Just the weight of the what-ifs. I buried him, or at least what they gave me of him, and threw myself into my work. I graduated top of my class. I passed the bar. I built a life. From the outside, I looked like I made it. A partner at a respected firm, tailored suits, the big corner office. But inside, I carried that night like a stone in my chest. Heavy, cold, unforgiving. I never got to say sorry, never got closure. That kind of grief doesn't fade, it settles, like dust in a house no one lives in anymore. And yet, all it took was one glimpse of that watch to rip open everything I spent 2 decades trying to bury. Because if that was Michael's watch, then maybe not everything I believed was true. Maybe Michael hadn't died at all. I stood there, frozen, as that one word echoed in my ears. Unravel. It was soft, almost slurred, like he wasn't sure he should say it. But it was unmistakable, and the moment I heard it, my body betrayed me. My knees buckled. I had to grip the edge of the bench to keep from falling. No one, not friends, not family, not even Michael's mother, had ever called me that. It was his little name for me because of my auburn hair, back when we were young and in love and everything felt possible. He used to tease that I turned dye red when I was angry, embarrassed, or in love, which, around him, was often all at once. The man on the bench turned slowly, his eyes glazed but alert beneath the grime and exhaustion. His face didn't look familiar. Thin, weathered. Too old, but there was something in his expression, like he was watching my soul shift. "Oh, do I know you?" I managed to ask, barely above a whisper. He didn't answer that, just stared at me like I was part of a dream he hadn't expected to see again. Then he looked down at the watch and started rubbing the glass with his thumb, like it meant something to him too. "Where did you get that?" I asked, more firmly this time, my voice shaking despite the steel I tried to put behind it. He looked up at me again. His eyes glistened. "On gift," he said quietly. "Long time ago. From someone who didn't belong here." I sat down beside him, heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. "And a gift from who?" I asked, nearly pleading. But he just shook his head and looked away. "And shouldn't have said anything," he mumbled. "Too many ghosts already." And just like that, he went quiet. Like a curtain dropped behind his eyes. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to demand answers, but all I could do was sit there, the city blurring around me, wondering how a stranger could know my name, my pain, and the last threat I had to the man I thought I'd lost forever. I ran across the street to the nearest deli, grabbed a sandwich and a bottle of water, something, anything to get him to stay and talk. My mind was spinning, my hands clumsy. I didn't even care that I left my briefcase on the bench. All that mattered was that watch, and the man who knew my name. But when I got back, he was gone. Just like that. Vanished. My briefcase was still there, untouched. But the man, the watch, the quiet whisper of Ored, gone, like I imagined it all. Like the city swallowed him whole in the 5 minutes I'd been gone. I searched the nearby blocks, calling out. People stared, some with sympathy, others with suspicion. I must have looked crazy, wandering the sidewalks with a paper bag in one hand and desperation in the other. I barely remember getting through the day. I called in sick to court, let someone else handle the deposition. I sat in my office and stared at nothing. My assistant knocked a few times, but I didn't answer. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept seeing his face, hearing that word, red. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. The watch had been one of a kind. The engraving was private. And that name, Michael had never used it around anyone else. He said it was just for us. I hadn't heard it in 20 years, not since the night he died. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was just a coincidence, a trick of the mind. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't over, and I couldn't let it go. It started as a way to calm myself, just a little digging to prove there was nothing there. That grief was playing tricks on me, that I was just tired, stressed, haunted by a memory that never really let go. But the deeper I went, the harder it became to believe that. I requested the accident report from 20 years ago, the night Michael supposedly died. I remembered the official version: single car crash, late at night, excessive speed, vehicle engulfed in flames, no foul play suspected. I'd accepted it then, because I had to. I was too broken to ask questions. This time I read every line. There were gaps, inconsistencies, no eyewitnesses, no photos. The coroner's report listed the remains as teeth heavily burned beyond identification. And then there was a footnote: unknown dental records available. Identification made via personal effects, a wallet, a jacket, and, curiously, no mention of the watch. I felt sick. I called Michael's mother. We hadn't spoken in years. Our relationship died when he did. But when I told her I'd seen someone with the watch, his watch, there was silence on the other end of the line. Long, heavy silence. Finally, she sighed. "I hoped this day wouldn't come," she said. She told me to come by the house. When I arrived, the place hadn't changed. Same faded shutters, same roses he planted for her one Mother's Day. She moved slowly now, smaller somehow. Older than I remembered. She handed me a box, said she'd kept it locked away. "Oh, and he wanted you to have this," she murmured. But I couldn't bear to send it after everything. Inside the box was a sealed envelope, yellowed. My name on the front in Michael's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it for hours, heart thudding like thunder. Because in that moment, I knew, whatever was in that letter, whatever he had to say, it would change everything I thought I knew about the man I loved, and the life I'd been mourning for 2 decades. It took me 3 hours to finally open the letter. I thought I had already dug as deep as I could, but after what John said, he's not dead, he just disappeared, I realized I'd barely scratched the surface. I went back to the police report, then the coroner's office. I requested everything: autopsy notes, photos, evidence logs. Most of it had long been archived, but some of it was still retrievable. I pushed, I called in favors. I told myself it was for closure, but truthfully, I was obsessed. That's when I saw it. The words that shouldn't have been there, and the ones that should have been but weren't. No viable DNA confirmation. No dental records available. They had presumed identity based on belongings found at the scene. Presumed. They had no way of knowing for certain that the body was Michael's. They didn't test anything. No one pushed for it. No questions asked. I remembered being told the body was in too damaged, that they cremated it quickly out of mercy. But now I saw the paperwork, and it wasn't mercy. It was convenience. Michael's father handled everything. He paid for the cremation himself within 48 hours. No delays, no investigation. Just like that, my fiancé was declared dead and reduced to ashes in an urn I was never even allowed to see. At the time, I thought it was grief. Now, I wasn't so sure. What if the whole thing was staged? What if Michael, pressured, desperate, scared, faked his own death? And what if his own family helped him do it? The room started spinning. My world, the one I had so carefully rebuilt, was tilting sideways. Because if Michael hadn't died, if he'd just left, then every year I spent grieving, every tear, every memory, every choice I made, because I thought he was gone. It was all built on a lie. I held it like it might explode, like the paper itself could burn away every belief I had about the man I once planned to marry. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet, written in his handwriting, slanted, rushed, but unmistakably his. I couldn't sleep after reading the letter. The words played on a loop in my head. He's not who you thought he was. Don't dig. But I couldn't stop. I had to know the truth. I'd built my entire life around the loss of a man who might never have died. So I did what I do best. I started tracking. I visited shelters across the city, clutching a photo of Michael from our last vacation together. I felt ridiculous, like I was chasing ghosts. Most people just shook their heads or gave me sympathetic looks. Some didn't even bother answering. Days passed. Hope dimmed. But then, at a shelter on the east side, I found him, the man from the bench. His hair had been cut, his clothes changed, but those eyes, still sad, still tired, were the same. He was sweeping the hallway, moving slowly, like someone used to fading into the background. I approached carefully, not wanting to scare him off again. "Oh, phew," I said softly. He looked up. No flicker of recognition, no warmth, just guarded stillness. "I brought you food last week. You had a watch, remember?" He nodded slowly, then said, "Go by John." I pulled out the photo and held it in front of him. "Do you know this man?" The second he saw Michael's face, his hand twitched. His eyes flinched like he'd been slapped. I didn't miss it. "Oh, is he to you?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked down the hallway, like checking for someone listening. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. "He's not dead." My heart stopped. "What did you say?" He looked at me, gaze piercing now, and he just disappeared. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. My breath caught in my throat. "How do you know that? Who are you?" But he just turned and walked away, sweeping slowly, as if nothing had happened. I stood there shaking, holding the photo against my chest. Michael hadn't died, he'd vanished. And this man, this John, knew why. Only it wasn't from Michael, not really. It was from his mother. She'd written it after his death, but dated it a few days before the accident. That alone made my stomach twist. "Dear Emma, it began, I need to tell you the truth, though I fear it may break you." She said Michael had been acting strangely for weeks, nervous, distracted, always looking over his shoulder. She'd found cash hidden in his old backpack, thousands of dollars, and a burner phone. He told her he was in trouble, that some people were after him, that he'd made mistakes, bad ones, he'd taken money, owed more, said he'd been trying to fix it, but it was too late. He told her he didn't want to drag me down with him. He was going to leave town, start fresh somewhere new, alone. He promised to send for her once he was safe. But that letter? It wasn't a goodbye from a grieving mother. It was a warning. "If anything happens," she wrote, "don't go looking, don't ask questions. Let the past stay buried. Michael was not who you thought he was." I read those words over and over. Michael lied to me. About everything the man I loved, the one who made me laugh, who held me at night, who planned a future with me, he was tangled in something dark, something dangerous. And maybe he hadn't died. Maybe he'd run, and maybe that crash was just the beginning of a much bigger lie. The deeper I dug, the more I uncovered. But it was only when I found him, Ricky, an old friend of Michael's from before I ever came into the picture, that the truth finally came crashing down. I found him living in a dingy apartment in the Bronx. He didn't want to talk to me at first, but after a few calls, a couple of favors, and a promise I'd leave him alone afterward, he agreed to meet. When he opened the door, I didn't recognize him at first. He was thinner, older, rougher. His eyes had the same lost, haunted look that so many people had when they were running from something. "You're Emma," he said, his voice low. "One a lawyer." I nodded, my throat tight, a need to know about Michael, about what happened to him, and he sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. "Look, lady, I don't know what you've been told, but the Michael you knew, he wasn't the guy you think he was." I felt my chest tighten. "What do you mean?" "Michael wasn't the sweet guy you fell in love with," Ricky continued. "And he was into things, stuff I'm not proud to be part of. He owed people money, big money, more than he could ever repay." My heart sank. No, this wasn't the Michael I knew. It couldn't be. Ricky glanced around, as if checking if anyone was listening. Then he leaned in closer. "C was involved in illegal deals, Emma, big ones. And when things started going south, when the people he was dealing with started getting violent, he panicked, he staged his death, got his father to pay off the right people. They made sure the body was cremated, no questions asked. He disappeared, vanished, all while you were left grieving." I couldn't breathe. My mind was racing, spinning, trying to reconcile what he was saying with the life I'd known. The man I loved, the man I'd trusted, hadn't been Michael Gray at all. He'd been someone else entirely, a stranger wearing a mask of the man I thought I knew. And now, everything, every memory, every moment we shared, was tainted by the harsh truth. He'd used me, he'd lied, and in the end, I had been nothing more than collateral damage in his escape. I couldn't stop shaking as I sat there in Ricky's dimly lit apartment. The weight of his words pressed down on me like a vice, suffocating everything I thought I knew. But I had to know more. I had to follow the thread, no matter where it led. Because what Ricky was saying, it didn't just rewrite Michael's death, it destroyed my entire history with him. I returned home, called in more favors, and pulled whatever strings I could. I traced Michael's disappearance. I found documents, address changes, traces of someone named Mark Davis. Mark Davis. That wasn't just a new name. It was a new life, a new identity. As I pieced together the puzzle, I found out that after Michael, Mark, disappeared, he started fresh in a small town in Tennessee. He'd bought a house, started a family, married a woman named Lisa. They had 2 kids, a son and a daughter. I stared at the photo of his new family, taken just a few years ago, smiling together in front of a Christmas tree. His children, his life, and there I was, frozen in time, wearing a veil of grief, mourning him like I was the one who had died. The betrayal stung worse than anything I'd ever felt. All those years, all those tears, all that time I spent locked in a cage of grief and guilt, while he, Michael, Mark, was out there, living a life I could never have imagined. A life that didn't include me, didn't remember me. He had chosen them, a new family, a new name, and left me behind like a forgotten chapter in someone else's story. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't look at those pictures anymore, and I couldn't stay in the place I had been, because everything I had built, the life I thought I was living, was a lie. The drive down to Tennessee felt endless. Every mile between me and the man who had torn apart my life stretched further, but I couldn't turn back. I couldn't unsee the photos of his new family. I couldn't unhear the words Ricky had spoken. He had to do it, for survival. I thought about how many times I had fought to survive in the 20 years since Michael's death. I thought about the grief I'd buried, the way I'd pushed through every day pretending he was gone for good. But he wasn't. He was alive. I reached the small town just before dusk. It was a sleepy place, the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else. I'd never been here before, but somehow it felt suffocating, like I was intruding on something I wasn't supposed to see. His house was modest, nothing special. A 2-story home with a white picket fence, the kind of home I had imagined for us when we were planning our future. I parked across the street and sat there for what felt like hours, watching the windows, The sounds of the neighborhood felt distant, muffled by the pounding in my chest. Finally, I saw him. Michael. No, Mark. He was outside, working on a car in the driveway. His hair was grayer now, thinner, his face weathered by age and hard years. But those eyes, the ones that once held all my dreams, they still had that same emptiness in them. I felt a sick wave of rage flood through me, but I stepped out of the car, walking toward him like I was sleepwalking. "Pull, Mark," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but loud enough for him to hear. He froze. His head snapped up, eyes widening as he took in my face. I saw the recognition hit him, slowly, painfully. His hands trembled as he wiped them on a rag, his body going rigid. "Emma." He started, his voice hoarse. "Own you left me," I said, my words coming out sharp, like a blade cutting through the air. "And you faked your death. You ruined my life. Why? Why didn't you come back? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" He looked at me, his face contorted with guilt, but there was no apology in his eyes. Only shame, and something else, something darker. "And I had to do it. For survival," he said, as if that was supposed to explain everything. "Say would have killed me, Emma. I didn't have a choice." But his words felt hollow. And somehow I couldn't shake the feeling that the man standing in front of me, the man who once promised me forever, was just another lie. I stood there, staring at the man I once loved, waiting for him to explain everything. The questions tumbled out of me like I couldn't stop them. How could he live this lie for 2 decades? How could he just disappear, leaving me to pick up the shattered pieces of my life? Michael, looked down at the ground, his face a mask of guilt. I could see him wrestling with something, his eyes flickering with shame. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "And it wasn't supposed to be like this," he began, his voice cracking. "It never meant to hurt you. I thought about you every day after I left, but the truth is, I was in too deep. I couldn't get out." I crossed my arms, tightening my grip as I tried to control my anger. "What are you talking about?" he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "On a crash." "It was staged. I wasn't driving that night." "It wasn't an accident, Emma. I paid someone to wreck my car. The cops thought I was dead, but they didn't look closely enough. No one checked the body. My father, he helped me too. He thought I was dead. He was part of the plan." "Why?" I choked on the word, my voice trembling with emotion. "Why would you do that? You left me. You left us behind." "Sin, I didn't have a choice," he said, voice almost pleading now. A night was in over my head. The people I owed money to, they weren't people you just walk away from. They would have killed me. I thought I could start over. And I did. I became Mark Davis. I built a new life, one that kept me safe. But I watched you from afar, every year. I saw you move on. I saw your pain. "Then why the watch? Why did you give it away?" I demanded, my chest tightening. "Why did you let me believe you were dead?" He hesitated. "I gave the watch away to a homeless vet. His name's John. I thought, maybe if I did something good, it would make up for all the pain I caused. I figured he'd hold on to it, that someone might remember me." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The man I had loved, the man who claimed he loved me, had watched me suffer for years, from a distance, with no intention of ever coming back. His cowardice had changed so many lives. Mine, his, John's. And the man who wore the watch wasn't just some stranger. He was a reminder of everything Mark had stolen from me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, staring at the man who had once been my world, who had betrayed me in ways I would never fully understand. His words still hung in the air, but I didn't know how to respond to them. To him. For all the years I spent holding on to the memory of Michael, to the dream of a future that was never meant to be, I now knew the truth, and with it came the strange, bitter taste of freedom. I didn't need to shout at him. I didn't need him to beg for my forgiveness, because I realized something then. I would never forgive him, not for what he had done to me, and not for what he had done to the woman and children he left behind. I didn't need him in my life anymore. I didn't need the closure he couldn't give me. Without a word, I turned and left. The world outside seemed so much colder now, but also clearer. My life wasn't his to ruin anymore. I drove back to the shelter. The weight in my chest, the emptiness that had been there for so long, was starting to lift. I found John there, sitting by the same bench, the same watch glinting faintly on his wrist. When he saw me, he stood up, looking hesitant. I didn't ask him any questions this time. Instead, I offered him a place to stay for the night, a hot meal, and, without thinking too much about it, my thanks. He didn't need to understand the weight of what he had given me. All I knew was that John had been the one to help me find the truth, and in that, he had given me the kind of closure that no apology or explanation from Michael could ever provide. I finally let go of the past. Even as it stayed with me, the truth had set me free. It's strange how life works, how the things that once shattered you can eventually become the foundation for something new. I never imagined that something as painful as Michael's betrayal would become the driving force behind the woman I was becoming. But here I was, standing in front of a judge, my voice steady, as I argued a case about identity fraud. I had taken on the pro bono case to help a young woman whose identity had been stolen, her life turned upside down by the lies of someone she loved. As I spoke to the courtroom, I realized something. The anger, the hurt, the confusion I'd carried for years, it wasn't gone. But it was different now. I could use it. I could turn my pain into something more, something meaningful. I had done the hardest thing already. I had faced the truth, and in doing so, I had found my strength. I spoke with passion that day, channeling the rage and sorrow I had buried for decades. I explained how the stolen identity wasn't just about credit cards or bank accounts. It was about control. It was about betrayal. And I could relate. I knew exactly what it felt like to have someone you love erase your identity, to watch as the person you trusted the most became a stranger. As I spoke, I realized something else. I wasn't just fighting for her anymore. I was fighting for myself. Michael was dead to me now, not in the literal sense, but in the only way that mattered. The man who had once been my future was gone, replaced by the reality of what he truly was. I didn't need his memory to define me anymore. The woman standing in that courtroom wasn't the same one who had been left broken all those years ago. I was alive, finally, and that was enough. I kept the watch, not as a symbol of the man who had broken me, not as a memento of the years I wasted grieving someone who never deserved my love, but as a reminder of what I had survived, of how time, in the end, doesn't heal, truth does. The watch, with its worn leather band and scratched face, sat on my dresser now, its ticking filling the silence of my apartment. Every time I heard it, I thought about how it had once marked the moments of my life that felt stolen. Every second spent waiting, hoping and praying for a man who was never coming back. It was the sound of my past, echoing through the present, reminding me of the darkness I had emerged from. But now, it was different. Every tick was a victory. Every second that passed was mine. The past could no longer control me. I didn't look at the watch and remember Michael. I looked at it and remembered me. The woman who had fallen apart but had rebuilt herself, piece by piece. The woman who had once thought that love and loyalty were all that mattered, and had learned that truth and self-worth were the only things that would ever hold her together. I could have thrown it away, burned it, destroyed it to rid myself of the last piece of him, but instead I chose to keep it, to hold on to it, not as a relic of a broken past, but as a testament to my resilience. The watch was mine now, a symbol of survival. Time may not heal all wounds, but it can teach us how to live with them. And I had learned to live again. The world was wide open now, full of possibilities, full of me. No more shadows, no more lies, just the steady tick of the watch. A reminder that I had found my peace, and I would never lose it again.